Bárbaro.
¿Cuánta gente tenemos en las redes?
No sabría decirte, porque justo con este sistema no podemos medir.
Sí, una vez que iniciamos la transmisión, ya cuando termine el evento vamos a poder capturar cuántas personas se conectaron y de qué partes del mundo.
Ricardo, aprovecho, me apareció como que estaba la grabación en progreso, pero no era yo, que me sale a mí cuando se está grabando en inglés también, porque no me había pasado
Sí,
antes.
sí, veo que usted está grabando y Catherine también.
Ah, bárbaro. Perfecto. Bueno, creo que 59, Alfredo está por ahí, creo que 59 podemos arrancar con el video, ¿no?
En un minuto.
¿Qué les parece? Sí, cuando hay 59 ahí, ya creo que dura eso más o menos, si mal no recuerdo.
Ok.
Ahí arrancamos puntual.
Listo.
El ICCA le da la bienvenida a este evento y agradece su participación. Estas son algunas recomendaciones para mejorar la calidad de la videoconferencia. Habilite su micrófono solo en el momento que le den la palabra. Es importante mantenerlo en silencio cuando otra persona está hablando. Por favor, tener encendida la cámara en todo momento para que otras personas lo puedan ver. Si necesita atender algo personal, puede apagarla y encenderla al volver. Agradecemos por favor poner en silencio sus teléfonos celulares para evitar alguna interrupción en la videoconferencia. Recomendamos cuide su postura y su posición frente al computador. Para esta reunión contaremos con interpretación simultánea a través de la plataforma Zoom. En la parte inferior del Zoom encontrará un icono con un globo, con la palabra interpretación. Por favor, dar clic en esta opción y seleccionar el idioma que desea escuchar. Es muy importante que seleccione alguna de las opciones al momento de hablar, ya que esto permitirá una mejor interpretación. Al finalizar el video, les pedimos el favor de hacer silencio durante 30 segundos. Una vez finalizado ese tiempo, el moderador o conductor puede iniciar la reunión. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Bienvenidos al ciclo de webinars organizado
Welcome to this webinars cycle organized by FONTAGRO and ICCA for Latin America and the Caribbean. Main stakeholders of agro-digitalization in Latin America and the Caribbean. We are here for developing and taking advantage of blockchain technologies. I would like to thank the Regional Alliance, Pablo Raices, who's the regional leader of the LACChain Alliance in the Southern Cone, Alban Sanchez, Gerardo Escudero, representative of ICCA Panama, Álvaro Frederick, manager of business, and general participants. For those of you who do not know me, since 1948, FONTAGRO has funded 167 regional projects for technical cooperation benefiting scientists and other stakeholders of the countries of Latin America, the Caribbean, and Spain. The Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, ICCA, is the organization that specializes in agriculture and Inter-American system that supports the efforts of the member states for developing of Latin America and the rural well-being. I yield the floor to Eugenia Saini, Executive Secretary of FONTAGRO and the main consultant, who will be the moderators of this event. Thank you very much, Leandro. Welcome to all. Welcome to this panel. Those of you who are participating, you're all the representatives of what's going on nowadays with blockchains in Latin America and the Caribbean. As Leandro was saying, FONTAGRO is the regional fund for agricultural technology, is a unique cooperation organization in the region that seeks to promote technological development, cooperation, generation of new science, new knowledge to really improve the livelihoods of people, and specifically to achieve that the agricultural sector can close the gaps that we still have regarding productivity and efficiency, and that in addition help us face the new challenges that we have for resilience, inclusiveness, amongst many others. ICCA, and together with Federico Vert, who's present here, we have begun these series of webinars with the purpose of bringing to the people everything that's going on with digitalization of the sector, the things that are happening, new technologies, and even the different thoughts, experiences. This is an encounter space that we have one Friday each month to get together and know these main actors that are leading these changes in the sector, in the country, and in the region. Welcome to this panel, welcome to the webinar, and I yield the floor to Federico Bert. Thank you very much, Eugenia. Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be back in this space for conversation that, as Eugenia says, we are working out together between ICCA and FONTAGRO, helping digital solutions to move forward, because we understand that that digitalization greatly contributes to transforming agri-food systems. Well, the Summit of Agri-Food Systems will take place this week, by the way. We have digital technologies incorporated in agricultural and agri-food systems, thus we can improve activity, sustainability, resilience, livelihoods, and rural work. And this cycle, as Eugenia said, is something that we are carrying out in order to support the main actors who are already doing something that are in the borders of digital agriculture to share experiences and thus help digital agriculture to be dynamic and inclusive, as Eugenia said as well. Today, we are going to be focusing on a technology that we have heard a lot about and that is promising, which is the blockchain applied to agri-food systems. And therefore, as the title of this cycle says, we have convened the main actors here, the ones that, as we would say in Argentina, are kneading the dough. So, welcome.
Gracias, Federico.
FONTAGRO and ICCA, and we will begin our conversation.
Pablo Raíces.
Thank you, Federico. We have the pleasure of introducing Pablo Raíces, who's the regional leader of the LACChain partnership, which is a partnership that encompasses the whole region, but that I'm sure is related to other extra-regional countries as well, and which is somehow the engine of the whole innovation ecosystem in the region. Pablo, welcome. Please tell us what LACChain is. Where was it born? What do you do? What are your expectations? What are your challenges? That is also very important to know. What are the challenges that you envision in the region to continue creating new innovation ecosystems? First and foremost, good morning to all. Thanks to FONTAGRO and ICCA Thank you, Eugenia. Thank you, Federico. Thank you, Leandro. What I'm going to do is to try to respond to your questions and to briefly present the network. When I do that, this will allow us clarifying the concepts. I believe that the first question that we can pose ourselves is, why live or launch this initiative? As you know, the BIT Lab is the innovation lab of IDB. It has been experiencing with blockchain technology since 2017. Between 2017 and 2019, they tested practically all blockchain networks available. And in 2019, they decided to create their own infrastructure. This is done because the infrastructure that was available at that time, which was public infrastructure, is not in agreement with the development of applications that governments can use on private institutions in general. So what is IDB seeking for in this initiative? Why did this blockchain was designed? It is to offer this alternative to the public networks existing at the time, allowing developing and develop an application ecosystem that is safe, that could be regulated without a transactional cost. The mission of the project in a nutshell is to develop the development of the blockchain system in Latin America and the Caribbean, thus fostering innovation and reducing inequality, promoting inclusion. If we take a few steps back, for those of you that do not know about this technology, what does the blockchain technology allow us in general? In essence, what blockchain technologies allow us is to have a record of global transactions that is decentralized. There is no central authority that controls the flow of information. You can add records, but this cannot be deleted, and it's very safe. In this universe, in agriculture, this record allows us many things. For example, and these are the most common cases. It allows us giving digital identity to a producer or identifying a producer. This allows traceability for a product along the whole value chain. It allows us identifying a non-digital asset in a network and assigning a unique identification. This that I was telling you is in general terms, and it applies to blockchain technologies. But to better understand the role of the network in this blockchain universe, what is important is also to understand what's the type of infrastructure that we have. On one hand, the networks that we knew in recent years, which are associated to cryptocurrency. When we speak about Bitcoin and others, we speak about networks that are public, where any person or entity may add a node. They can just join the network at no cost. They're anonymous, decentralized, but the cost of transactions for those who want to participate in the ecosystem is high. This occurs because the nodes that enter transactions in the network compete for validating these transactions, and they receive economic reward for adding new blocks to the network. This might sound a little bit technical for some, but it is as if you enter a registry in a database. This had a cost for members. This process by which this record is added to the networks and each of the servers that belong to blockchains, they keep a copy of this undeletable record. It's called mining. This works in the world of cryptocurrency because it assigns autonomy, but it does not work autonomously. So as a consequence of this, we have private networks that arose, that were created by institutions or clusters with a given end. They use all the blockchain technology available to register information, but these are networks that we use as a cluster. In the midst of these two types of networks, we have networks like the blockchain network, which are public networks, but that are permissioned. These are open networks like Bitcoin, and Ethereum, which are decentralized. They have the whole blockchain technology, but they do not use cryptocurrency. So the nodes that validate the transactions, they do not receive an economic incentive to do so. This allows that the government institutions, for example, ICCA or FONTAGRO, if they would like to work on a network, for example, Ethereum, which is a typical cryptocurrency network, it is not too usable. So we believe that a network like LACchain, which is a regional infrastructure, it was created by IDB for utilization of countries in the region, as this requirement is not there. It is not only more efficient, but also more foreseeable. There's a difference with other networks, that it is also the fact that it is permissioned. As it is permissioned, what the network allows us is having a level of control on the stakeholders interacting with the network, which allows us regulating the network. At the very technical level, for those who are interested, the LACchain network uses a technology that is very similar in its characteristics to the network pertaining to Ethereum. In 2019, infrastructure was recognized by ITU, which is a standardization entity from United Nations. Our technical teams in America, especially in Spain, collaborate with ITU as well as with ISO for the standards. What do these standards allow us to do? Well, they allow us something that's key in the future, which is going to be interoperability, the exchange of information among different blockchains. We are not going to end having one single blockchain network globally, but we're going to have a set of networks that are going to speak among them. So the development of these standards and being aligned with these standards will allow us to be at some time in communication with this fluent communication. This is very similar to what happened with internet in the scope of the decentralized database as blockchain. If we go to the figures, we have 109 nodes deployed in a network, 63 entities, 9 countries participating in the ecosystem. It is worthwhile mentioning that we have and had more than 600 entities along the region that expressed in one way or another interest in participating in the partnership. We have contacts with governments, organizations, universities. What the intention is to create a plural ecosystem that differentiates itself from public networks. As I was saying, that it is stable, regulable, that it can be legalized.
Como la aduana, como las
We have
aduanas.
national and international organizations that support us, and we have the Ministry of Finance of Costa Rica, for example, the BND Bank in Brazil, Everyday's Word Data, and different companies that help us develop this ecosystem. Finally, and now just moving on to the case studies, I would like to describe some of the projects that are running on our network, specifically those that have to do with AgTech, which is our purpose today. As I was saying before, we have 2 types of projects, those that are associated with the entity, which is the case of Agro with the LACchain, and which provide a digital identity to non-digital projects. This is being developed in Peru, and what they do is promote inclusion within smallholder farmers, giving them an identity, a reputation, and with this, the possibility of accessing the service market, which otherwise is difficult or expensive to do. So thanks to this digital identity, they help create a bridge between services that are digital natives, for example, in finance aspect, with producers that otherwise wouldn't have access to these services. On the other hand, we have the traceability projects for products. which include most of the products that we see in this AgTech space. As I was saying at the beginning, these initiatives use blockchain mostly to identify the itinerary of a product from the moment it is harvested to the other end of the value chain. Some traceability projects that are running on this network, for example, a coffee chain in Honduras, a project in Belize, Copecan, to trace processing and commercialization of products in Peru. We expect to have a potential impact on more than 100,000 producers. I mean, as you can see, there are many other projects that continue to grow day after day. So if you wish to know more about them, you can follow us or you can contact us on social media. Apart from the typical tools, we have a repository that we do with these characteristics, and I want to emphasize that LACchain is not is a non-for-profit. So what we wish to do is promote knowledge in the region. So everything is available, is completely open for anyone who wishes to enter into the blockchain world or get to know LACchain better. Okay, so this was a short introduction to our chain, to our LACchain, and of course, I am willing to answer any questions or concerns. Thank you very much, Pablo. This is the first webinar that we do on blockchain, and I think we will need to have others, because I think that each of the examples that you showed, I think would require, you know, a chance to explore them in further detail. I don't want to take up too much time, but very quickly, I wanted to ask you, what is the main technological challenge for blockchain, in your opinion? Do you think that something new may come in the future? Is there any type of trend for the future? That on the one hand, and also very quickly, based on agricultural examples, what do you think that makes these initiatives sustainable, and which makes them continue? And is there any determining factor to adopt blockchain in the agricultural world, and for people who join to not leave in 3 years? I mean, what ensures continuity? I don't know if you want to answer this now or later. I think I can answer both questions in one. I think the biggest challenge now has to do with legislation, because we are creating an entire universe within a digital world, but we still live in an analog world. So we still face many challenges regarding how those laws need to adapt so that whatever we create in this new digital space that we are living in is sufficiently valid and suitable. Same thing as with email at one point, or digital signatures at another point in history. Same thing needs to happen now. The legislation needs to reflect what is happening in the world of blockchain. A digital identity that is issued in blockchain should have a validation of governments and the approval of governments, and should be recognized by government. So that's the major challenge. Technology is very fast-paced, and governments lag behind with their policies and legislations. And just one very short thing. In LACchain, apart from what we offer technologically, we also work a lot with the analog world. And so one of the things that we do is to put together working groups, and we have working groups throughout the Americas, and we work, this work includes lawyers, political specialists, and we tell them what LACchain is about, and we work together with them in order to generate, you know, products that could be read maybe by policymakers who are going to make decisions. We know that the digital universe is not alone, and we try to share it and work with all the stakeholders. Excellent, excellent example of how we need to really start working on the legislation, because it's not just technology in agriculture, and I think Federico will agree. There are many advances, but they don't have the sufficient legal framework, and that restricts adoption. And it has to do with improvements that will lead to efficiency, resilience, etc. So of course, I think we need to support those working groups that you mentioned. Thank you, Pablo. We will probably invite you again and contact you because there's a lot to be done in this regard. Federico? Yes, absolutely. It's super interesting, and I agree with Eugenia that we will need another session to delve into this topic in more depth. What we deal with when we talk about digital technologies, I think the most important thing is to include different perspectives. This is why we put together this panel today with actors that look at technology from different perspectives. So I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum and have a conversation with Alvaro. Alvaro Celeri is the manager of business transformations of the Renier, and he will tell us more about his work. But he is here representing the users of technology, in this case, blockchain. So Alvaro, the first thing that I wanted to ask you is whether you could briefly summarize what Lordeñe does and how it was that you started working with blockchain and why you started working with this technology and how you are including it or incorporating this technology. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for that question, Federico, Eugenia, Leandro. It is a true pleasure to be in this webinar. I'm learning so much from all of you, so thank you for this opportunity. As Lordeño, we are a company that produces milk in Ecuador. We have a production of powdered milk and Tetra Pak products. In the market, we have about 20 years of presence, but we mostly focus on business-to-business powdered milk production. And our Tetra Pak plant started operating in Ecuador because of the need to produce milk for school breakfasts in Ecuador. We deliver milk to more than 1 million children per year in Tetra Pak. We are now launching our mass consumption brands in the market called True, which is a project that has been going on for 3 years. And we have been innovators from the get-go. And we've always tried to reflect the essence of the company in this brand. And in our company, we have a differentiating factor, which is that we have a network of 6,000 milk producers. So it's small. So our purchase model is made through a model that we call associative business inclusive. Business-oriented and inclusive. Associative because what we do is help and promote smallholder milk farmers so that they can deliver their milk to a main hub or a main center. And then reaching that scale, it allows them to negotiate directly with the plant with no intermediaries or network in the middle. And so this is something that we're very proud of. This is a huge network of 6,000 milk farmers that obviously is difficult to manage. It's not the same to work with one producer that produces 5,000 liters than dealing with maybe, I don't know, a smaller unit with 800 different variants. So this has a lot of issues regarding information, regarding the technology that you need to manage this model. And it is precisely because of that that we need to talk about blockchain. Why blockchain? Our company evolves very fast. And we needed a strategy of digital transformation and a strategy that would help us make data-based decisions. And so in this frame of mind, blockchain for us has become the tool that provides the most opportunities for us to integrate the entire model of 6,000 farmers and to integrate them with distributors and consumers in a way that is at the same time innovative, but which also provide us some guidance to have a data strategy for our company. Thank you very much, Alvaro. I wanted to ask you especially about how you came across this technology. To what extent have you implemented it, and how you use it to work with the 6,000 producers that work with you? I think it's very interesting to tell our audience how, with a technology that of course has certain challenges, how you do to sort of come across it and start leveraging it immediately. After deciding to start working with blockchain, we started using at first we started using Food Trust by IBM. And we made this decision because our market expectation is to grow and reach the export market for milk. And the major supermarkets such as Walmart or Carrefour, in some of their products, they require traceability and they require the use of technology to buy from you. So that was the main reason why we saw this always as one of the goals, because we want to expand our market. And in order to do so, you need traceability in order to export. And how did the changes present themselves? One of the challenges was to digitalize all processes that were manual before or that were non-digital. So we needed to convert the data to make them analyzable. So all the milk collection process changed completely. For example, the data that came from the carriers, where we started capturing the geo-reference of the tank trucks and the information about the quality of the milk that the providers received, the temperatures. So it really digitalized a whole bunch of information that for us now can be managed. And so this has allowed us to improve the quality significantly. On the other hand, regarding the main hubs and the main centers, led to another project, which is the project to manage all of those centers where the milk is put together, because this allowed us to go into more detail and know exactly who the producer is, how many cows they have, what they are doing, and be able to send them messages in order to communicate directly with them. So with small things that had to do with communication, we were able to make major changes. And so what does blockchain do? It helps us digitalize everything we can.
And if we take a look at this from the efficiencies internally in the plant, this has triggered, for example, connection projects from our plant, from our packaging company and our powder milk plant. These are part of the operations that we are doing all day long, all the time, that normally do not necessarily enter the accounting systems of the companies. SAP, which is the system that we have, is a system that gathers transactions, and it helps accounting control and accounting management of the company. But the management of operational processes requires you to begin working on IOP processes, collecting things, and machines to systems. And blockchain allows us integrating everything in one single platform. So the capacity for analysis in the company is really important. For example, we do this part of our business line is breakfast at schools. It's 1.2 million children that are cared for with blockchain traceability at any moment when there is a mistake or anything that we need to check. You can access information in 1 minute and you can determine the source of the milk lot where it was in the field specifically up to the moment in which you delivered the milk to the school. The capacity for responding is really quick. I have a lot of questions. I do not want to take too long because we still have very interesting interventions pending. But allow me for just one extra question, and I appeal to your synthesis capacity for responding. I understand that the possibility of specifically identifying this, as you were saying, has already been implemented. Was this a result of deciding entering into the blockchain world, and in turn, by having been in the blockchain world, led to the digitalization of other processes in your company?
Concreta es,
Milking,
implicó esa
for example.
digitalización en el ordeño, en
The
términos
question is, what did this digitalization imply in milking cows in terms of costs, capacities inside the team, training that was required to different stakeholders within the company? I know that my question is too broad and it would take an hour to answer, but I hope that in 30 seconds you can give us a really general.
La integración de los sistemas,
landscape.
es decir,
Well,
cuando ya
it implies the integration of systems. That
Todo lo-
is to say, once you have blockchain, everything makes sense. Everything that's manual has to be digital. So it allowed implementing other technologies, for example, RPA, which is like robots that register data faster than people do. We began eliminating manual steps and we changed everything for applications or integrate our system to stakeholders that we were not planning to implement. For example, delivering SAP licenses to distributors that not belong internally to the company, but it required that integration from us to them so that this digitalization helps all. With this, we all won, but we always have these barriers that in my system, who should enter or which stakeholders. And I believe that the benefits of blockchain is that they make you think in the supply chain as a whole. And this is the decision that changed, the mindset that changed that allowed us completing this. Thank you very much, Alvaro. Later on, we're coming back to you, but I propose, Eugenia, to move forward with the other presentations. I still have things to tell here, and I'm going to take some time here, and it's simply,
Me tocó trabajar en ganadería.
this is
Que lo que es
something
muy
that I had to
importante
do when I worked in livestock. The important thing is the functional analysis, transforming agribusiness systems, agri-food systems, to understand the functional system, how it's comprised, how are the parties interrelated. When we need to work on a diagnosis and afterwards design a system, as Alvaro said, well, the idea, and I would like to introduce Alban because I'm sure that Alban has had to do things like this. Alban, welcome. Alban is the director of Elantra Technologies. He is based in Costa Rica. Colban, tell us about your experience. Yes, thank you. We are a company that is a kind of a rebel, if you would like to say so, for the Latin American reality. We began as a Costa Rica-based company with a research and development team developing products
venderlos en todo el mundo,
that
¿verdad?
our main objective was to sell them worldwide. Not imported products, but products developed from the base to the software in IoT. Along these years, we have been through several different investment stages, and now we're part of a group that's based in Dallas, Texas, and we have had customers from Australia, New Zealand, Europe. We have teams for grains in Ireland, and obviously Latin America, South America, much of a lot in South America, but of course North America too. And the big challenge in blockchain is that blockchain is a part of a relay race. It is a relay race in which the baton that goes the one that needs to be delivered to the blockchain is the information. We need to deliver the information, and to deliver the information in the agricultural field, we need to go out and capture that information. And in the agricultural sector, that capture the collection of information, the Internet of Things has very special functions or elements. We have connectivity in general, we have the whole infrastructure nearby and everything there in an industry. But when we speak about an agricultural industry, whether livestock, water bottling systems, or planting sugarcane or wheat or whatever, we're talking about hectares. We're talking about very big farms or areas of very broad coverage. And for that, we require a technique or a series of combination of technologies that's very specific, very special. We do not have Wi-Fi in the farm, so we have to create connectivity mechanisms, reach the different points in the farm with a connectivity that is profitable from the economic perspective of what I pay to a carrier, but also profitable from the energetic perspective of what a sensor may have or not for self-sustainability in time. So we need to deploy different systems in the agricultural sector to collect that information. Once we have that information, how to the cloud, how to process it? Well, and how do we analyze it? Well, that's something else that is related to platforms. Other systems take information to systems such as SAP. And precisely there is where we are currently with this big challenge of how to share information horizontally amongst competitors, for example, or vertically along a supply chain. Blockchain, if we would like to summarize this, its main objective, so to speak, socially, is eliminating trust barriers amongst the stakeholders in a chain, whether vertically or horizontally. We have had that experience in other scopes, for example, connectivity. We have companies that are competitors. We have to install a tower to cover 200, 300, 500 hectares of a farm. And right next to it, there is another competitor. If one competitor installs one antenna and the other competitor installs another antenna, we can have greater coverage both together, and they can share and cohabit in one single network to be able to record information of hectares, soils, cattle, etc. It is understood that it is economically more profitable for both if they share that. It's very similar in blockchain. If we have a network like LACchain that has the advantages, for example, such as costs, it's permissioned by public at the same time, and it allows us exchanging the information that I would like to exchange with my competitor. That's a win-win for all. And also, in the case of milking cows, it's integrated in the supply chain, whether at the cluster level or linear level. I can have information at all stages, whether transportation, harvesting, processing, etc. But just adjusting it, not necessarily the node or the person who's sharing information has to share everything, all the whole information. It could be just sharing the information that we need for a greater purpose. So that's where we see an interaction and a synergy that's extremely important between what we do nowadays, which is simply take the glass to the table, or moving a ladder a little bit higher and sharing information among the different stakeholders. Thank you, Alban. What are the productive sectors that are closer to Lantern? And what are the challenges that you see to expand the utilization of the technology? Is there a productive sector that requires it more than other? Is there a special characteristic for that sector? Well, that's a wonderful question, Eugenia. This is a challenge that we have as a region, as technology also. In the case of the Latin American region, it happens a lot. This is not about a specific sector, the one that is going to this technology more frequently, but there is a type or a layer, a scale of companies that are going there. I mean, companies like sugarcane mills that have very large extensions with their crop, corn, for example, people who have the capacity, not only economically, but also economies of scale to have agronomical engineers like Alvaro, who is there
Cuando llegas
in
a
his
ese nivel,
company that
gente encargada de eso,
markets milk.
gente que está atrayendo
When
ese tipo
you
de...
reach this level where you have people in charge of that, you have that towards the company, but we have the big challenge of generating porosity to small producers. It could be through a productive chain, like the cases that we are seeing now, but this is not necessarily so always. There are some producers that sell to local markets, and there might be a big gap in the capacities that they can have today and the capacities of their colleagues at a large scale. Well, and talking about that precisely, we were discussing that yesterday with Pablo in a meeting with BitLab and Federico, that we somehow has this, we are accountable of reducing that gap that is increased when you introduce a new technology that is not available for all, like in the case of Latin America, where we have medium and small scale producers, and we need to help them reach and incorporate technologies such as this. This coincides with the vision of the experience that you have in your work. And I also take advantage of this moment to take that FONTAGRO and ICCA are currently working an initiative to take a look at how we can support in the reduction of that gap. We spoke about that with Federico Vert, so we really welcome that very relevant topic, and we need to discuss that in a webinar. Alban, thank you very much. We're going to continue talking about this because this is just the beginning. Federico, I yield the floor to you. Thank you, Eugenia. And we have completed perspectives about this technology today by inviting Gerardo, who is a friend of the house. Gerardo Escudero, thank you very much for being here, who from ICCA has been working in the implementation of pilot cases in blockchain. I would like to ask Gerardo to tell us what are you working for the implementation of blockchain from ICCA? How did you choose those cases? And afterwards, we would be interested in the learnings. We're working at the country level with the different organizations to, well, that means what are the ingredients?
Thank you very much, and hello to all the FONTAGRO family. This is really an issue that is so important for us, and for ICCA, it is extremely important to think about these issues because digital solutions in blockchain, of course, focus on bridging gaps in the agri-food sector versus other sectors where it is really starting, and it's medicine, trade, and the agri-food system in Latin America. It's a great power, of course, but it is lagging behind in the application of these technologies. And also because the vast majority of agri-food producers are, in general, smallholder farmers and have the position or have the role in positioning America as a food supplier. Also, we are talking about the public role, the public function, because it's not just about specific solutions of companies that provide a solution to different kinds of companies. No, things move forward so quickly that this has to be dealt with in the public sphere, because these are public goods, as Pablo said. And if we really want to leverage full inclusion and ensure full inclusion, one of the central topics that we need to focus on is the issue of governance. Yes, what institutional framework must we continue creating so that actors, institutions, and what rules of the game must be applied? Because this is not just about blockchain, it's about creating ecosystems based on blockchain to really fully leverage, and not just focusing on traceability in a platform, but also the trade and the business processes for a payment platform and a financial traceability system, just like ICCA does with its alliance with FONTAGRO, with the IDB, and with the IDB lab, and also with Microsoft, and also with Food Chain. So it's not just about one partnership to be able to overcome that challenge for us to do it inclusive, but it's really going beyond all of these things. Our approach is from the point of view of that company that is connecting with that entire chain, and then the chain connected with the public policy sphere. And we are now working with alliances, for example, with the Andean Community Support Organization. And in Peru, we work with private and public partners. And of course, we need to have full knowledge on these issues. So the private sector, we are working with smallholder farmers in an association, but also with large-scale companies. Of course, conditions are different for each case, and we need to leverage synergies. However, the major challenge is that today there are no companies that can export or import without the permission or authorization of the government. So the regulatory framework and the legislations, the standards, of course, have to do with the issue of governance in general, and we need to address that. In Peru, the heterogeneity of cases, and since this is a chain that is growing so quickly, you know, second, third grape exporting country, allows us to use existing platforms and adapt them to the regulations and legislations of each country, involving the government in the process. The same thing applies to Uruguay, where we are also developing another pilot project for sheep meat to be exported to the United States, or the family farming chain for the export of banana, the case of banana when it comes, well, the Panama, sorry, for the traceability, and for the swine flu that has been affecting certain countries, African swine flu. So we are, of course, developing this as a pilot project. We are doing the beta tests. We have these solutions. And with Pablo, we are agreeing to work with LACchain. We are associating, of course, thinking of the importance of alliances, and maybe thinking about running this pilot project and trying to apply it concretely in the chain in Peru for grapes. The agri-food system in our country is massive, and we are in an agriculture 0.4, not 4.0, yes? Connectivity fails, and in the practices that our producers engage in. So what we're trying to do is really take them to another level. And this requires awareness, this requires approaching them, requires training, learning, and trying to show through successful examples. Because in this way, Latin America and the Caribbean need to really see to believe. So I think that's one of the conditions. We need to really appropriate and really own up to these technologies. And this requires participation and appropriation. We believe that it's not just a tool, because it could be blockchain or any other tool, but the important thing is that good quality practices, good agricultural practices in producers and business practices as well, have to go hand in hand. If you use good information into blockchain, it will produce good information, and the same thing with bad information, results won't be good. So our conclusion is clear. We are seeing that these tools must be supported by the empowerment of producers and the training of producers and their associations. And regarding solutions, we have solutions, we have software coming out all the time, and even the governments are developing their own apps. But we have an issue of interoperability here, and we heard this from Alban, we heard from Alvaro as well. Blockchain provides us with nodes that are in Latin America or in the Caribbean. They have the LACchain highway, so what better to do than to strengthen this network and connect to it through the agri-food system. Finally, I would like to raise my final point, which is the cost benefit aspect of this. For a producer, for an association to start working with this, they must see the cost effectiveness of this approach very clearly. And this is why ICCA is developing pilot projects to show the success of these approaches and that show very clearly how successful they are. Our main concern right now is to continue promoting this that we've already seen in Brazil, in Argentina, in almost all countries that we talk to producers. And organizing this type of webinars is essential to quickly establish public policies that accompany the initiative of the private sector and of companies that have the solution in their hands. Federico, I hope that I've been able to describe overall some of the elements and the different types of cases that we work on. In order to conclude your intervention, I just wanted to ask you a very specific question, which is that once you started with these pilot projects and having run into the difficulties that you described, what do you think is the main challenge to move forward with these pilot projects or to move forward with others that may start in the future? Well, the first thing is to raise awareness among government actors. This is the most important thing. This is the main challenge that we found, but it's possible. It can be done. And institutional jealousy sort of start fading away when things are done based on public-private partnerships. Thank you, Gerardo. Thank you for that brief response. Very important one. Thank you. Gerardo, thank you very much. What you've mentioned is extremely important, and it goes back to what we discussed at the beginning, right? Governance and raising awareness among the different actors. The main lesson here is that we cannot work in silos. We cannot work in isolation. Anything that we do, we need to think it from the perspective of an ecosystem. And the public and private actors need to be included because they will be affected by this, and they need to have a role for things to happen and to have the impact that we are looking for. Conclusions are that the regulatory framework is essential, and it happens in agriculture in general. When new technologies are developed, we need specialists who in turn are working with decision makers to adjust and to design the legal framework for this to happen. We see this all the time. On the other hand, as I said, FONTAGRO and ICCA are working on this initiative to see how we can bridge the gap in the adoption of these new technologies and slowly start contributing so that producers who are there are working and have different scales to ensure that they can access the new technology, which will allow them to, on the one hand, redesign the functional systems of their production approaches. Because in the agricultural sector, they work in a certain way. And when new technologies arrive, many things need to be changed. And technology is what is allowing that change to happen. So that is in a way, the process, how technologies make processes more efficient and make them more functional, the things that are actually in the farms. And another thing that I was discussing at the IDB lab, we cannot do this alone. We have to do it together. If we are working on this initiative, it's important to avoid the duplication of efforts, join our efforts and see, okay, what is your strength? What can you do well? How can you support this from the point of view of your organization? And that's what we are looking for, both Federico and myself from ICCA and FONTAGRO. What we're trying to do is to implement this new initiative so that all the agencies that are working on digitalization with the same goal, which is to improve the well-being of people who are in the territory and try to bridge the technological gaps that we have and that we've had since the 50s, the 80s. So we welcome this new space to find a new commitment and a new work team. And Federico asked the last question, but I wanted to just give a few minutes to Pablo, Alban, and Alvaro. Each one of you, can you just mention very quickly what the main challenge is that you have in your sector of everything we discussed? Pablo, what is the main priority or challenge that you have in blockchain? For me, the main challenge is to continue developing an infrastructure which is supported in the real world where things really occur, and being able in a way to legislate what is happening in the digital world. At the same time, blockchain itself has an issue that has to do with performance. And this technology is improving every day. It's not the same, it changes quickly, and it's been adapted recently. And what we're seeing together is how, with this ecosystem, and how things in the same as in the non-digital space, things are growing, and blockchain is growing as well. Consumption of energy, for example, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of these things over time, we can adjust them so that the technology can be sustainable. So I would say that, find efficiency with respect to technology, and at the same time, in the real world, find reflection so that we can raise awareness in the public sector, so that we can create legislations. Alvaro, what is your main challenge? We have multiple challenges for sure. The main one
is adding more stakeholders. We need more stakeholders in the chain that add information in the platform that we'll work on, mostly public ones. We have all our suppliers that comply with regulations and certification, but it would be very important to have AgroCalidad, which is the organization in Ecuador, AgroQuality, which is the government entity that rules this field. It should be them who say that the permits are ready, and so that this could be disclosed to the whole chain. So adding up stakeholders or actors on the commercial side as well. I'm sure this happens in many countries, but the main supermarkets in countries sell analytical information of what they sell in their supermarkets. So there is there is not so much collaboration. For example, I would like to be able to uh, achieve traceability from the field to the hands of the consumer. When you change it to an actor where you do not control that part, and this is information that can be sold, there is a matter of interest there. It's complicated to have the blockchain nourishing more. So we need to break down these trust barriers and perfecting the model little by little. And lastly, I would like to say that blockchain is not only good for traceability, its uses are very varied and many. We are seeking for social impact and environmental impact. Just to tell you something quickly, we're working with FAU in climatically smart livestock growing. This would allow producers reducing the carbon footprint per liter of milk produced, but in turn having a very significant economic impact for them. It is very important that through the blockchain, you can provide more data, more information to the stakeholders. Blockchains right now are asking for all this data, but I'm not capable of returning all the data to the stakeholders that can make a difference. I could give back information to a producer of how long should hay or grass need to be eaten, and the challenge is to provide important, significant data to stakeholders to improve inefficiencies. Thank you very much, Alvaro. Alban, your main challenge. Thank you, Eugenia. The main challenge, and by far the greatest challenge we have from our customers, is adoption, but not adoption from the perspective that they do not want to adopt the digital technologies. But the thing is that it is being chaotic to have digital adoption. Some customers, even large ones, do not have a clear strategy of where they are going or how they are going to be measuring their return on investment or what they're going to be implementing. They go to an international fair, they buy all these devices from all these sales people, brands, and they want to implement it all without a clear strategy of how they are going to have their return on investment from these expenses. So they go to tactics, and that part makes it very hard. Two things. One, justify afterwards in a rational manner the investments. And we are building Babel towers in the companies where we have systems that do not talk to other systems. We have small technology clusters that do not communicate amongst themselves and are not going to be able to be integrated under one single umbrella. This has been part of the market down in the trenches, one of the main challenges that we find with the customers that we have. Thank you very much. This has been such a wonderful webinar. Digitalization is a one-way road. We're all here and we need to go there. So welcome for telling us your challenges and all the good things that you have had with blockchain, milking, coordinating with all these producers at different scales in such a complex world as is milk. And also, Alban, in everything that is related to the incorporation of all these technologies of the Internet of Things, and Gerardo, your challenge also, and everything we have in the region, trying to add more stakeholders to facilitate this process. For the impact, we have to do this together. It's not that just one of us is going to achieve something. Where all our actors are joined with the one single vision to achieve that objective. We're going to keep in touch. As I was telling you, FONTAGRO, we are interested in having an initiative that's related to how to help small farmers to get rid of this gap for adoption, as Alban said, because this is not a matter of going and buying all the devices that are sold in the fair, but we need to understand how the functional system is going to be modified, or what I do as business unit, as a company, and what return is going to be generated. This webinar was loaded with these wonderful concepts that I believe are very useful for different profiles of people who are listening to us, and very useful for us, even ICCA, FONTAGRO, and where to direct the efforts that we're working on and would like to work on in relation to digital technologies. So I wouldn't dare summarize what has been said here, because it would be really hard, but I would like to say as a final comment is that these webinars have been organized with the idea of sharing experiences, ideas, and concepts, and we invite you to not leave the things here. Let's share ideas amongst us, and those of you who have been listening and those of you who have been telling us about your experiences. These webinars are for that, and we hope that we contributed not only to begin changing our mindsets, but also to design more conversations for the future. So I close with these, and I want to thank you all on behalf of ICCA FONTAGRO, the speakers, and all the audience that joined us, and all of you who are going to be with us from now on with our webinars. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Cuando nosotros vemos a Latinoamérica, el Caribe y España, no
When we see Latin America, the Caribbean, and Spain, we do not see the borders. We see the needs, the opportunities, and also the shared experiences by more than 17 million family farmers. They not only produce most of the food in the region, they do it with a great diversification, contributing to environmental sustainability and biodiversity. 17 million farmers who also face the challenges of sustaining and improving their productive systems in a context of a climate crisis. Challenges without borders that require solutions without borders. And this is what regional leaders saw when they joined their forces to found FONTAGRO almost 25 years ago. We are an international cooperation platform for development and co-financing of projects of science and agricultural innovation. From our headquarters in Washington, D.C., with the support of IDB and ICCA, we promote collaborative projects amongst collaborations of national technology institutes of 15 countries in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Spain. Along our story, we have contributed to 167 innovation projects with an investment of $124 million. Currently, we are executing 40 projects which connect the efforts of 362 researchers in fields as diverse as crops, livestock, food and markets, natural resources, forest production, and agriculture. We are FONTAGRO. We are collaborative science in action. And years after it adopted its current name, it was founded in 1948. It is the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture. ICCA was born after a need that the American continent would have an organization with the mission of promoting agriculture. Along its rich history of contribution to these objectives, ICCA has provided and connected knowledge, offering training and executing projects that lead to productivity and sustainability in rural territories. This way, it has achieved a positive impact that is translated into income and insertion in the markets. 34 member states comprise the ICCA in the Americas and Spain as an associate. Along its history, it has been a world in constant change. It has made specific contributions that have been relevant to strengthening institutionality. It has a main role to guarantee development. It works to build a more productive, inclusive, resilient, modern agriculture with greater participation of the youth and women. 78 years of a very fruitful history. 78 years of positive transformations in agriculture.